All right, good afternoon, everybody. We are excited to kick off our July webinar on a random Thursday. So thanks everybody for joining us. And I'm Ryan O'Neill. I work with the Wyoming Arts Alliance, and I am going to welcome our current board president, Carmen Rossi, to share a few words of welcome, and then we'll introduce our presenter for today.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, and thanks everyone for being here today. On behalf of the Wyoming Arts Alliance, I'm thrilled to have you join us for today's online arts and culture series. Whether you're an artist, advocate, educator, or community leader, your presence here reflects the shared passion we all have for the arts in Wyoming. As we come together today, I want to take a moment to express again our deep gratitude for the ongoing partnership between the Wyoming Arts Alliance and the Wyoming Arts Council. Their vision, support, and dedication to fostering a vibrant arts community across our state are instrumental in making our work possible. I hope you'll find value in today's webinar. We have been working really hard on a toolkit that we're excited to share with you today, and hope you find value in that and today's conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Carmen, for being here and providing your support from the board. I see we have a few other board members too, so that's nice to see the support from our Wyoming Arts Alliance crew. Okay, well, I'm excited to welcome our panelists today. I started conversations with Rosa a couple of months ago, and so I'm excited to be bringing this forward now. What we know is that I think all of us can use some refreshers on how we can get better at sharing our story. And I have loved the conversations with Rosa about how storytelling is really a part of advocacy and helping people understand what issues impact us and how we need their help in moving forward. And so it felt like a very timely conversation for us all as we're in summer and in an interim session with the legislature. So I'm really looking forward. So I'm going to let Rosa tell you more about herself, and I'll talk myself with my dogs.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for having me here again. Let me try to make sure we are able to screen share. And as Ryan said, this has led a lot of conversations. I'm sure everybody has had some advocacy conversations, either at the board meetings or in private or at coffee shops. I know my friends and I always do. So we're going to just kind of briefly discuss how you as an organization can actually be part of this during season and off of season. So again, my name is Rosa. I am actually based out of Sweetwater County. I am a strategist, a storyteller, and a community organizer. I've been around for about 8 years now. Some of you may or may not have heard of me. I like to stay behind the scenes a lot of times, but a lot of my work has been statewide, where I work with nonprofits, making sure that they feel empowered to be part of the legislative process and the advocacy world. I am bilingual, so I've worked building bridges between government entities and Hispanic communities, especially here in Sweetwater. I've sat on a few boards to try to make sure that they also understand how to give the most back, right? And getting those people that probably are kept out of the those rooms, make sure that they have a pathway or feel empowered to join those boards. I've worked building civic participation programming. That way everybody felt that they knew what was happening, and then also voter education. I'm extremely passionate about meeting people where they are. So if that means in somebody's house or church, and sometimes coffee shops, as Ryan discussed, this is where my passion is at. And so sorry, but the first one is, I always like to start in the chat, your title, because I could see your name, but your title and your organization. Is it a 501c3? And what is one word that comes to mind when you hear the word advocacy? And I'll share you with mine. So I'll give you guys a few seconds. Complicated? Yes. Ooh, education. That's a good one. Yes, definitely support. So for me, mine would be scary. Even though I've been around for about 8 years, advocacy is very scary, especially when there's so much happening all at once and so much red tape sometimes, and you can't do certain things and you just don't know. But at the end of the day, it's only scary whenever you're forced to do it. It's actually really nice to start working on advocacy from day one or from an off season. It's just relationship building. It's collecting stories and just showing up when it's time, right? So for nonprofits and specifically nonprofits, a lot of times we don't understand what advocacy truly means. Some of us are afraid to get engaged. Some of us are sometimes a little nervous of what does that look like for us? Are we going to get backlash? What if we say so the wrong thing? What if our 501(c)(3) status is threatened? So I've heard a lot of these. I, for one, have also spent many times questioning what should we do? But after a while, and doing research and reading up on it, it's beneficial. So truly understanding what advocacy means. Basically, it's the act of communicating your value to your community and decision makers. Um, that's why, right? Like, why are you here? What is your organization doing? Why is it important? What programs do you guys offer that benefit the community, and why should you be here? You can also educate the general public and elected officials on the issues that mean the most to you. A lot of folks that I have worked with in the past have brought in lawmakers and just really quickly explained what their cause was. Um, and I'll give some more information on that, but it just depends on how your tactic looks like. Remember, we're not endorsing anybody publicly. We are not, or not even privately, but you're not trying to get anybody to go your route. You're just trying to educate, right? At the end of the day, it's their decision. You gave them all the information. So that information can look like in storytelling. You might have had an artist come into your organization and was able to have a success story out of that, right? Was able to get a piece added to the capital or something. You could talk about how many students you've taught, how much your budget impacts your uh, local community. So it's also engaging in nonprofit relationship building. This looks like having coffee with your local official or having an elected official at your one of your events. Um, Always invite everybody, regardless. I always like to go online and invite every single lawmaker to an event because, again, it's nonpartisan work. Doesn't matter what letter is next to their name as long as they're all invited. And you actually don't need a policy team. I come from an organization that had a team of three, and only one of us had the policy title, yet all of us did policy. So you really don't need to have like an entire team. It could be a one-man show. Just knowing how to do the work is where we're at. You just need to be present. You got to be prepared, and you basically need to have people-centered stories. Again, how many students have come into your building, how many artists you've worked with, how many community members have walked into your door, right? And so then, sorry, the goal is always be proactive, not reactive. That's something that, again, like I mentioned earlier, don't wait until your funding is threatened or you're on the defensive side. Sometimes that happens, and that's okay. And as we all live in a very small state, we always see that side, right? We don't want to be on that end. We want to be on the off season. We want to try to be prepared so that way when you are being on the defensive side, you know what to do or you've already established those relationships. So during the off season, I just met with my favorite story is a library locally here in Sweetwater. The library director went ahead and she invites all of the elected officials uh, before they head off to Cheyenne, shows them everything she does, right? Programs, what they offer, tools that they have there for people to check out. They do a tour, they get them library cards, right? Like they show them everything. And that's how they have been hosting their little small events. And it's really interesting because we have seen successes out of that. County commissioner attended an event, and when they were being threatened for their funding, they're like, actually, this is not what they do. I've seen it for myself. And so it's really nice to have those elected officials rally for you, right? So you're not the only one rallying for your organization and what your mission means. So building those relationships with elected officials before you actually meet them, making sure that they understand what you do and why you do things. Again, small events, those are great. And then also preparing your message about your impact when you're not scrambling is the number one. It's a lot easier whenever you're like, this is what we do, and knowing your board, knowing what you do and why you do things. So that way, whenever you are in the middle of chaos, you're able to be clear on your talking points and how your work, what your work means. So I always tell people, start telling your story now when it's super strong and not when the chaos starts, which is the goal. So during that off season, I always suggest audit your communications. This is something, again, you don't need a huge communications team. I know some of us work in a one-person organization with our board, and our board is very busy. And as a board member at a nonprofit, I sometimes don't have the capacity. And so sometimes it's just one or two of us. And sometimes we have interns, sometimes we don't. So always know where you are with your communications. What is the stories that you're telling people? What does that mean to the community members, right? What do you even do? As speaking on the board side, there's times where I have no idea what day-to-day looks like for staff, right? So I always go in and like, hey, why do you do this? Or what is this program about? And vice versa, right? Making sure that those that are on your side know exactly why it matters. And then also training those folks, including staff, on the mission, the talking points, and the process. The process, I should put legislative process. Some of us do receive funding from the state, and sometimes that can be seen there. And it's okay to know that. I have worked with those folks who have new staff members, and staff members didn't know where the funding came from until it was threatened. So kind of being a little transparent and understanding, hey, this is why we do things a certain way, or this is why we're here, this is our reason. My favorite is hearing stories from board members or volunteers who were there from day one. Those are great, especially like, somebody was sitting at a kitchen table and decided, we don't have this, we're lacking this. I love hearing those stories, and those are the stories that should be shared publicly as well, which leads to number 3, which you collect those stories and photos. You don't need a whole entire photography team. Nowadays, our phones are just as great if you have a smartphone. Take a few photos, right? If you're hosting a small event where lawmakers are in attendance, snap a photo. They love it, especially since they're always running out for re-election and need content. Everybody needs content. So ask them, hey, can we snap a quick picture with staff and you or something, and publicly be like, hey, thanks for joining us. Something small can go a long way. And so using the correct messaging is always great. I always tell people to build a bank of content, which is my number 4. You don't need a huge team. You have the tools. Some of us have really great tools, and I'll share those in a little bit, but having some clear messaging, some quick photos, you can get that information out. Usually your entire organization can actually be part of this. Your board members, I've been on some where board members come in and like, hey, I snapped this photo of so and so speaking. Oh, perfect, thanks, because I didn't. And so grabbing stuff like that is great, and then that way you can build it out. Being prepared a few months in advance is great. And again, time is never on our side. So if you have a day where you have like an extra hour, hey, I just have these quick ideas or something. Putting them down because they will come in handy in the future. And then also hosting small events, coffee chats with your local elected officials. Show them why, right? Like why you matter and why you're needed in your organization, your organization is needed in the community. Build those relationships. Um, Sometimes I have been caught at Walmart by our elected officials and, hey, I saw you at this event. Like it was great, wasn't? And none of us none of us sit on the board of that organization. But the fact that they were there, we were both there, we can share that. And walking away is knowing, like, I was at this organization's event and why, right? Because then later you don't know who they're talking to. They might be sharing your information to somebody else. We're all little marketing tools, so use your events, use your what you have. If you don't have a building, that's okay. Make those relationships with business owners. Hey, can we host an hour chat here, like coffee shop? Or hey, can we come in to your library and host a paint and sip, something. You can always create something small and get folks to be in attendance that can help be part of this entire thing. And tools, right? None of us have millions of dollars or billions of dollars to spend on digital tools. So using social media, your newsletters, your websites, show what your work looks like. My favorites, and I'm probably going to age myself, but I love watching people doing setups for behind the scenes. Like I didn't know how much a Broadway theater actually did. And I was watching a video for like 4 minutes straight. And as somebody who has ADHD, that really was telling. I fell in love with it. I was like, oh, wow, so much work goes into this. And being able to share that with others and hearing testimonies on impacted stories. Sometimes you can get volunteers who probably walked into your nonprofit one day in need or, and you had that. And now they have their own testimony out of that, and you can have them share it. Highlighting staff always and your volunteers. And your community partnerships, your collaborations, a coffee shop, so and so let us stay here and host our event. Those are always great. And that's also sharing that information out there. It's part of storytelling. It shows that you are in the community, you are engaging with folks from all over. It just shows real people. Providing data with soul. That's my favorite one. Because I'm not a numbers person. I hate seeing um, all this like data. I don't want to know that. I want to know what impacted, right? Like as somebody who does this, I want to know what happened. You fed 25 people. Awesome. I love that. Now if you're like, well, we fed billions of people, and you're like, that's not true because I don't see photos. You have to have some kind of photos with everything. We live in a digital era where not everybody's staying around to read your paragraphs on social media. So use that to your advantage. There's a lot of tools, a lot of different things happening. There's a lot of trends. One of my favorites is a day in the life. And that is something that the younger folks are watching nowadays. From what I've heard, before and after stories of how people are walking away from an event, behind the scenes, those are also great. And then also creating like monthly themes or days. Why We Exist Wednesday was one of my favorites. I thought that was cute. So use what you have. Canva Pro is available for nonprofits. You don't have to pay as long as you have your information set up with them. ChatGPT, I know a lot of us are unsure. Sometimes it's great using, you have all these words that you want to put together and you want to make it clear for folks to understand. So throw it in there, see what it comes up with. You can always take it or leave it, right? Use your social media accounts and humans. Use your folks that are in your organization. Use your directors, use your board members. Sometimes board members are interested in that. So ask them, hey, what do you think about this? There's some new tools out there, Linktree. Hootsuite is one. Boulder Advocacy. That is one that I constantly use. It's a website that kind of gives you what you can use as a nonprofit or what you can do as a nonprofit. It breaks it down to you. And yeah, and then obviously your audience, ask them, hey, do you guys want to see behind the scenes? Do you guys want to see you know, what we're coming up with, or where we have some input and hype them up. And then always use your partnerships. Ask them to help you share your events or help them, you know, bring in organizations that you might not have thought about. Build those relationships because lawmakers are everywhere, right? So connections can lead to change or not. The reason I put not is because sometimes we want to keep things the way it is, right? We don't want our funding to get threatened. So that's something that we don't want to change, but sometimes we do, depending on what's being at stake. So using community members, they can help you amplify your mission. They can be the ones that show up for you. I always tell people, imagine going into a room full of folks and you're there to state your cause and nobody has ever heard of you, right? Or would you be in the room where you're rallying for you and they're there for you, they're showing up? You feel a lot better, right? There's two different rooms. So use your community members and then use your elected officials. Build those relationships with them. Sometimes they are the reason why we're in those stressful situations, but have them be your supporters instead. Have them know why you matter and what your organization is all about. I always tell folks, remember, elected officials are community members. They live in our communities. They utilize our organization. So kind of build that trust with them. And when you need them, call on them and be like, hey, I see that this is coming up. Can we talk about this? Can I tell you why you should, you know, not change this or do so? It just building those relationships with both community members and elected officials is super important and can go a long way. And then also knowing what's next, right? A lot of people that I have worked with, and as myself as well, we always look at it as I don't have time or I don't have the capacity. And looking at these dates, it looks like we have a few, right? Like we're coming up closely to some. We're looking at 207 days until budget session. Use that as your trial. Start now where you can get folks trained, kind of test it out, see what that looks like. And then also elections, you can actually advocate and remind folks to vote. As long as you're not endorsing anybody, hey, election's coming up next Tuesday. If you are a polling place, hey, don't forget, this is where we're at. You can utilize all of this information publicly and share it. And then also, this is something that like you can do, right? Like everybody can start with one thing tomorrow, either their social media or figuring out what their comms look like, or does your board member know what you do, right? What is your mission? What does that look like? What would you want it to look like? And then what would you need to start? For a lot of us, probably people, probably billions of dollars, but what do you have, right? What's accessible? Would a toolkit be helpful? Would there be folks that are already doing this kind of work? Can you lean on them? Can you call on them? Can we work together, right? How can we be helpful? And so this is something that I always tell folks, partnerships are key. Sometimes they're the ones that are helping you out, or they have ideas that did not that they weren't able to complete, or they did and it was successful at one point, and they're like, hey, you should do this. It's always great to kind of hear what others are doing and either collaborate or work together towards that same cause. But yeah. And then, so I will just leave my contact information. And we can always brainstorm what your advocacy game plan looks like, especially with us being kind of early before session starts. You have a few moments, the holidays are coming up. You want to get that information out. And yeah, so I'll pass it over to Ryan if there is no questions.
Well, Rosa, that's a great overview. And while we give people time to maybe generate some questions from what you said, I wonder if you and I could go back to when we first started these conversations. We talked about how my experience thus far has been that there's a real reluctance for people to put themselves out there with any information because it feels like the target's not on our back right now, right? So we just kind of want to like put our heads down and not draw attention to ourselves. That's not across the board. but that's a sentiment I'm feeling, and not just in arts and culture, right? But in other sectors too. Like if we're not an area of focus, let us not draw attention to ourselves. Can you just talk to me a little bit about why you want to caution people against that mentality and how storytelling can be an easy way to start that journey of, sharing some of the pieces? But
Yeah,
specifically that hesitancy, I think that's very palpable. I feel that with organizations. So,
and it is, and it's real, right? We always have to name the elephant sometimes in the room. And out of fear shouldn't be the reason why we're doing it. Instead, it's let's just highlight what we do, why we're here, right? You already have these conversations with everyday folks that walk through your door. You're already having them, right? If you're tabling an event, you're already telling people why you matter, what you do. Um, so why not just continue that in a little bit, louder way, in a bigger platform? Advocacy does sound scary, um, depending on how much experience you have in it. But a lot of times it just takes those small conversations you've already been having and just amplify them a little bit louder. Just go, and it could be it could be scary,
mhm,
um, for sure. And we've had that conversation where, well, what if this is going to happen? And that's okay. Like we just have to be realistic and be prepared. And that's why storytelling is so important, because you're humanizing the issue. You're showing the human side of your organization, which is why you do things, right?
right. So in this time where we're leading up to our budget session, and there is some concern that arts and culture things may be something that gets focus and is not prioritized with limited funds, because that's a reality. How does telling your story kind of set us up for success when that budget session comes around?
Yeah, especially that's a great question. Actually, having told your story can kind of prevent that, because looking at an elected official, right, from their point of view, if they see that you are going to be threatened, let's just say Wyoming Arts Alliance, right? And you've already built those relationships, they understand truly what you do. They're going to be probably like they're not going to try to remove your budget. They're going to be like, hey, actually, I know why that they matter, right? We actually shouldn't be doing this or something. They become your advocates and they're doing your job for you, right? At the end of the day, that's what you want. You want more cheerleaders to understand your mission and chant for that. Um, it's really hard being the one person show sometimes and
Mhm.
feeling like you're by yourself. But when you go and you bring others to it and you explain your story, your reason, your mission, it changes things. I've been in rooms where lawmakers are actually advocating for a nonprofit. And I'm like, whoa, I thought we were here to save our nonprofit. And they're actually on our side. So it's really nice to see that side. Now that won't happen all the time. That's perfect world, but it does
Right,
happen, um,
right.
which is really important. Why you're building those relationships, why you're collecting those stories.
Okay, again, I'm gonna just keep asking questions because I have them, but I do want to invite others, if you have some, to please put them in the chat. But I will make the Wyoming Arts Alliance an example, and I have a few board members on, so I hope that's okay. But one of the things that we have struggled with is, I mean, our intern is putting some great content on social media. Whoop, whoop, Yasmin, she's in the house. She's gonna talk to everybody later. It's great. Gonna be up here on the Zoom webinar. But she's been doing great stuff. And we're slowly reworking our website, but here's our problem, Rosa. Like people don't really know us and know to look there. So even if we're doing a great job of telling our story on those platforms, like how do I bridge those things? Because if we're telling our story and no one's listening, I feel like it's not very effective either. So do you have any insights about how we might boost visibility in our digital spaces?
Yeah, so
Tell
I'm
me
a
I'm the
fan.
only one with that problem.
No, you're good. It is a problem that we all see, right? Um, And I love to tell people that that's the beauty of living in Wyoming, because we know our neighbors, right? We live in our small communities and yet we kind of know each other. So tabling events, like I go old school, like tabling events, showing up to events in your community that you're already at. I have worn a pin and somebody's like, oh, what is that? Or brings up a conversation like, oh, I also know who this is. And you just, it's sometimes if you're not a people person like my husband, sometimes it's hard, But it is also a time where you never know. Like I've heard him say, explain to his at work, hey, this organization does this when somebody's like in need. So you
Mm.
just never know making those connections. Online, it's a little harder, but I always tell people using board members, like, hey, you have your own social media circles. Like everybody can be an influencer if they wanted to. We all have more than two people following us sometimes, right? And share it
Right,
and just be like, hey, this is the organization that I support and this is why. Um,
right,
this this is how they matter, or this is why they matter. So it's always using those small one-on-ones, and those will grow as you continue, and using your newspaper, your local newspaper, putting out stories, press releases. Press releases are sometimes free, and just hey, the Art Alliance is inviting the public to this event. This is who they are. This is what they do. Um, People are in Wyoming, we have that luxury. Um, and I always tell people outside of the state that they have to work a little harder because there's a lot more people and a lot more content out there. When for us, it's local, right? But
right. It's funny that we're having this conversation as we wrapped up just 31 minutes ago, the WYO Gives Day, because it was extended until noon. And I feel like a lot of the strategies that they put forward in terms of getting the message out and trying to get people to give might also be effective strategies for getting people to follow you. And you're saying some of that, right? With having your board members share it in their spheres of influence and their social networks. So we can borrow ideas from the Wyoming Nonprofit Network and their WYO Give strategies as well. So
exactly. We have some really great tools here in Wyoming, including the nonprofit network. It's also we don't instead of using it one day, right, leading up to WYO Gives, why don't you continue that, right? Continue sharing those stories, continue having that. Because when it comes to WYO Gives, you've already been heard. Like people know who you are. They've heard of your organization. So you're not scrambling to also just do everything within a few weeks leading up to it. So that's always helpful. But I do see two questions.
oh, good. Thanks.
I just didn't ignore them. But we'll go
Yes.
back to somebody said, I'm hoping that you can comment on how telling your story can be done using a method that reflects the organization's mission or values. Definitely
Great question.
using, yeah, that's a really good question. Actually using your organization, again, depending on your organization, you can utilize this. I have seen where folks are um, showing up to city council during public comments and saying, hey, we're here to invite city council to our event, right? We're inviting city council to volunteer at a food drive. We're here to invite you guys to participate at our farmers market. We're inviting you guys to show up to our um, citizen lobbyist training. It just depends on how that can help because that also gives you a piece to share your story publicly. And it takes a few minutes. And also using, I always tell people the elevator pitch. What does your organization do? What's your values? What's your mission? Because if you're stuck in an elevator with somebody, you want to get that point across, right? Especially when in our world where people will ask you, what do you do for work, right? Or who are you here with? Or what organization do you work with? That's a perfect time to practice those small little elevator pitches. Um, I've been in spaces where I'll share 2 minutes and then by the end of it, they're like, actually, we should talk because this is something that I'm interested in or something, right? Having that down can go a long way because you can also utilize that on digitally, like online, using those same talking points. Um, it just depends on how comfortable your organization is. And that's why it's very important for your organization to know what your mission is and what your values are. Hopefully that helped. And the other one was, what type of pitfalls have you seen groups make? And again, it goes back to board or staff doesn't truly understand the mission. Um, because that's the person that's running, those are the people that are in, like, should know your organization, right? So sometimes having new staff members not really know um, what the mission was or why it was started. That can be that could be a wall um, because then that also reflects on your digital side of things if they're creating content. So always make sure that everybody understands truly understands your mission, truly understands your passion and why you guys matter. Because I think every nonprofit in Wyoming matters, and there's a reason why you're here.
Rosa, can you say a little bit more? Because I feel like one of the other pitfalls you and I have talked about is tone of messaging, right? And trying to find the balance between education and then maybe like, yeah, something that is maybe received as more aggressive or confrontational. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think you're spot on about board and the people in the circle need to know and understand what you do and who you are and what you're about. But maybe then talk to me about the importance of tone, because I feel like there have been some organizations that we work with on the group for the Wyoming Civic Engagement Network have shared some stories where their tone was received differently than intended, and that had some impact for them. And so I just wonder if you might, do you know any examples or have more to comment about tone in your communication?
So on what I have seen personally, never ever respond right away. Your first initial reaction sometimes is can be taken just like that. So I always think breathe and let's think about it. What are our options, right? Let's do some communications with our staff or board. Um, because tone in today's day, tone is completely different, right? Especially if it's online. My comment might be, hey, that looks so great, that looks so fun, and somebody's like, well, that's rude. I always think of like that comedian, um and it's Keenan and Peele, I believe, and he's like reading a thread like, well, whatever you want to do, and he's like, well, that's so considerate, and he's like aggressive on the other side.
Yeah.
Because you just never know, right? So I always think, let's take a pause, let's read it again, understand what that tone looks like. Sometimes our comments, we have to be completely back to mission. What does our caption say? Is it truly talking about our mission? If we have to protect this, are we being our authentically selves, right? Does this reflect our values? Which is why it's so important to kind of review your talking points with your board, with your staff, because you don't want to get out of those. You don't want to go into, we're all humans, right? We don't want to add our own personal bias into it. You kind of want to discuss that and be clear, okay, this is what we are here for. If we have an issue, there's some really great national organizations and that work with, they do trainings on how to communicate and during chaos. Um, and I wish that I would have added that, but yeah, it's just
We can always put it on the website afterwards if you want to share it.
exactly, yeah, we definitely will. It's just knowing, where your tone is and what is the voice, what is the tone of your organization, right? What are the words you guys use? What is the point that you want to get across? Again, is this a caption that you want to post, and are you going to stand by it? And if somebody comes against you, but what are you going to say, right? So yeah.
Well, this is maybe a perfect transition to Yasmin and our toolkit, but I'll just share this one piece of that conversation. Because we talked about that, right? That we want to strike an educational tone in encouraging people to talk about their funding story. But it's a fine line, right? Like, do we want to like assume that our funding is going to be under attack and lead with that kind of like terminology? Or are we approaching this from a different angle to say, hey, we just want to, tell you a little bit about how we do what we do, right? And but I think it can be tricky, right? Because I think there can be some tone that potentially is alienating to people. And so it's a good thing to keep in mind. Okay. So Rosa, I'm going to keep you as a part of this conversation. So please bear with me while I bring in Yasmin, everybody. Okay, here we go. Promoting to panelist. And I want to, as she's joining us here, just talk about, we have been traveling the state doing listening sessions all over. And the one commonality has been the community members who attend often are not aware of how the various organizations in the room are funded. And that's fine. We don't go into detail and invite people into that conversation always. But when we are in a position where we think some of our state funding and we know our federal funding has been an open conversation, it feels like there's some space where we might do what we can to be proactive in educating people about how different arts and culture initiatives and organizations are funded, and that they do receive state support in many cases, or federal support, and whether that's like direct funding or potentially granted through a different organization. But we started talking, and so Yasmin has been hard at work on creating a toolkit. And so we decided we'd use some of our airtime with Rosa today, since it seems to fit nicely with the topic of digital storytelling, and share this resource that WyAA has created about creating your funding story, and sharing that with the stakeholders. So are you ready, Yasmin? Okay, you're muted. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you. And then do you want to share your screen?
Yes. Let me.
Okay. You can also say hello and introduce yourself and tell everybody how long you've been working with WyAA. Any other fabulous details you would like to share about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Yasmin McNeely. I've been working with WyAA since, I want to say, maybe October, November of last year. I've had a lot of fun. I got to participate in, I think, 1 or 2 listening sessions. And I'm a college student at the University of Wyoming, and I think that's it. I don't know.
Beautiful intro. Okay.
I'm trying to find which one to do. I can't see. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm struggling to share.
In the meantime, I'm going to put in the chat the link to the funding story, which is on our website, so that you all could pull it up and start to peruse as well. But Yasmin's going to just talk a little bit about the material that is contained in that toolkit that has been created and why we're encouraging people. And Yasmin, if you need me to put it up, I could do that too.
Could you possibly do that? I don't know why it's not sharing. Sorry about that, guys.
It's okay. Here is the website, and hang on, there we go. Here is our toolkit, and then I'm going to hide this. I'm going to zoom in on this business. Here it is. Does that work?
Yeah, that works fine.
Oh yeah. Okay. Take it away. I'll be your driver.
Okay. So one, I feel like Rosa and Ryan went over a lot of what's already in our toolkit, so I'm not going to go very in detail with everything because I don't want to be redundant with more information that we've already received. But we can go to the next one. So basically, what's kind of inside of the toolkit, this toolkit isn't like mandatory, like hard set rules that you have to follow. These are kind of just like guidelines or things that you can use to guide what your organization is already doing. So some things that are inside this toolkit are best practice recommendations, examples from Wyoming arts and culture organizations, tips on using visual and social media, and sample messaging that you can adapt for your own organization. The goal of this toolkit is to help you share where your funding comes from with donors, partners, and most importantly, the community, and just show how like your funding matters.
Okay. So do you want to highlight a couple of these?
Yeah, so the first one, we kind of talked about this already, but collaborate with leadership in your board just to make sure that everyone understands like what your board is, like what you guys are doing, and just why you guys are sharing your story to the community. And then for the next one, make sure to educate staff and volunteers because they are often the ones that are the face of your organization out in the community. So make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page so that you're not getting different things around the community. And then also something that we wanted to highlight was choose platforms that work best for you and your organization. So that could be social media, newsletters, websites, or even local newspapers, just what you think works best for your organization.
I feel like we copied all of this from what Rosa just said, but
Yeah,
I
I was
swear
thinking that was just
we didn't, but we're spot on. I'm giving us a gold star. Are there other best practices you want to draw attention to?
I feel like we talked about that one. We talked about the importance of percentages too. I think one of the ones, I think it's towards the bottom. I think we
Okay.
talked about this a little bit, just like the impact of tagging people in the community as well, just to kind of like continue to share, yeah, the elected officials ones, the 9.
There you
Just to continue to kind of invite them into the conversation. I know we talked a lot about like inviting them out when we see them in person, but I think also tagging on social media, if that's what your organization chooses to do, is something that's a good idea. And then I think we talked about this a little bit too, but connecting with other organizations to kind of share like ideas with each other. Like there's nothing new under the sun, so it's no harm nor foul with like sharing ideas and just seeing what somebody else is doing that may help your organization.
Okay.
And then I
Do,
think towards the bottom is just our example.
should we share our example?
I think we should.
Okay.
So this is kind of just the example that we put together for WyAA. Here we have some percentages that kind of just show like our funding story. So as you can see, it says that like 50%, 52% of our funding comes from state grants and things like that, so forth and so forth. And then you can, I think, go to the next one.
Well, hang on. Can I say more about our funding
Sure.
story on this part?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just barging in here.
Oh, okay.
But I think this is a good example, right? That if state funding for arts and culture is impacted, that's 50% of the Wyoming Arts Alliance budget. That would be a significant impact for us if the funding were eliminated or significantly reduced. And I don't think that we're alone in that as an arts organization, right? Like, sure, our focus is arts advocacy, but I think it's important that people know that that's where we derive most of our funding is through state support. We get some federal funding through our regional arts organization. And then we have some nonprofit partners that provide us a little bit of support. And then mostly it's private donations and private foundations that make up the difference. So we have a tiny, tiny bit, 2% is our membership. And we love it when people want to be members of WyAA. Membership starts at just $25. If there's anybody who is listening that hasn't become a member yet, there's an opportunity to do that. So, and we wanted to then put together some text that illustrated what the impact of those dollars are. So up above is a bullet pointed list of some of the highlights of our work in the last year that corresponded to this budget. So we would envision having something like this be online, or Yasmin will do a social media post using this information, both either in text of slides on social media or, in the comments down below. Clearly, I don't run our social media. That just became very apparent to everybody. Okay, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so here we're kind of just breaking down once again with percentages where our funding goes to. I think this is important just to like show why the funding matters and kind of like what we do. And I think it's better to like show where it's going than just be like, yeah, we use the money. That's so here you can just see where our funding goes to, and it's kind of just broken down bit by bit.
Yeah. And I would offer on this, like, I think it can be scary as we were creating these, like, do we really want to tell people how we use our money, right? But I think that it shows that we're being good stewards of the dollars that we receive, right? That we spend less than a third supporting the people who do the work, and the bulk of it goes to connecting around the state, building relationships, and doing the work of advocacy and education, both with communities and elected officials. And so I feel like those percentages tell that story, that we are, not hosting extravagant events to connect with elected officials, but we are being responsible citizens with the dollars that we have received, both grant dollars and donations and membership dues, that we really want to make the most effective use of the dollars. So I understand that organizations might be hesitant about this part, but I also think it really is helpful in communicating that you are being responsible. So, okay. And then we've asked organizations that have agreed to take this on to share their examples. So when we get them, we're going to add them in. Yep. We have a few. We've primed the pump with a few that are willing to share. Yeah. All right. So Rosa, I would love just to hear your thoughts as we've reviewed this. We shared it in advance, but.
Yeah, when I was seeing it, I was looking at my presentation, I was like, this is amazing. You guys did a really beautiful job. both aesthetically and research wise. And I love having the transparency of like the budget, because then that way people can see, you know, where their dollars go. I think it goes a long way, especially in today's time. But yeah, good job.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's already people chiming in. Thank you, Carmen, for adding membership, because I gave a plug, and our other board member, Desiree, who works with Art Cheyenne, so she can see us using it internally and externally. So that's great. Well, we are really excited to share some examples from around the state. But what I would say is that before we can do an action alert and call people to step in and advocate for funding if it's potentially under threat, we first need our stakeholders and community members to know that we do receive funding from the state or federal funds. And so, so I think if you can find a way to work it in as an educational moment in an event that you're holding in person, or do it online, or using your social media. We had one person who we asked who did an example, who did an annual report to their board members, and then they decided they would post that online. And so I think it can take a lot of different forms. But the main thing is for you to have a conversation with your leadership and decide what is the best format for you to share your funding story with your stakeholders, so that when needed, we can rally them for support for arts and culture if our funding is under consideration. If it becomes under consideration. So, all right. Rosa and Yasmin, thank you for joining. Is there any parting words you would offer as we encourage people to do more storytelling as a form of advocacy?
Keep doing it. You can start tomorrow.
Yeah. Yasmin, anything you want to say? I'll give you the last word.
Make sure to tag WyAA if you do.
Yes. If you tag WyAA, we'll share your story too. And we're going to be working to get more and more people on our social media platforms as well. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll follow up with Rosa to get that additional resource, and we'll put it up on the website, and we'll post our recording for those who aren't able to join today. Thank you, as always, for joining the conversation and for your support of the Wyoming Arts Alliance, and for all that you do to keep arts and culture thriving in the state of Wyoming. All right, take care, everyone.